Good morning everyone, this is Mike.
And I'm Linda.
And we're starting this morning with the Society News for Friday the 15th of December 2017. Tuesday. Due to refurbishment of the waterside pool in Ryder, dolphins will not be taking place this week. The weekly swimming sessions will now resume on Tuesday the 2nd of January 2018. On Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this Wednesday at the 20th of December. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea as well as a piece of cake. The Owls group will be out having their Christmas lunch this Wednesday on the 20th of December. Therefore, there will not be the usual meeting at Millbrook House. The next meeting will take place on Wednesday, the 3rd of January 2018. On Thursday, the knitters and natterers have now finished for the Christmas break. The next meeting will be on Thursday, the 4th of January 2018. And any other news? From Terry Mitchell. Dear readers, there will be no mailing of the Talking News next week, December the 22nd. This is because envelopes are unlikely to be delivered until after Christmas. Instead, 2 weeks' news will be on the memory stick dispatched on December the 29th. The Talking News for December the 22nd will be available on the Society's website as usual that day. We're sorry for the delay this year. May we take this opportunity to wish you all a good Christmas and New Year. Please come along and support the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind's Short Story Writing Competition Awards ceremony on Monday the 18th of December at Newport Minster in St Thomas's Square. Doors open at 5:30 p.m. with the ceremony starting at 7 p.m. And Millbrook House will be closed for the Christmas holiday period from Friday the 22nd of December, reopening on Tuesday the 2nd of January 2018 at 9 a.m.
And now for the scaffolding news. The Bay and Ventnor area. There is currently scaffolding at 70 High Street, Shanklin, Hamborough House, Hamborough Road, Ventnor, Yummy Tummy at 28 High Street, Shanklin, and new scaffolding is due up at 3 Fort Street, Sandown, due up on the 19th of December this year. And in the Cowes area, there is currently scaffolding at 20A Shooters Hill, Cowes, Flat 1, 10 Birmingham Road, Cowes, and there are hoardings at 70 to 73 Arctic Road, Cowes, and 93 High Street, Cowes. New scaffolding is due up at the Red Squirrel Shop and Bella, 73 and 74 High Street, Cowes, and that's due up on the 2nd of January 2018.
In the Newport area, there is currently scaffolding at 38 Key Street, Newport, 18 Lugley Street, Newport, Fuji Film, 79 St James's Street, Newport. New scaffolding is due up at Domino's, 41 St James's Street, Newport, on Bowling Green Lane, due up the 20th of December 2017, 4 Clarendon Street, Newport, due up the 21st of December 2017, and Readers, 33 South Street, Newport, due up the 12th of February 2018. In the Ryde area, there is currently scaffolding at Oasis Dental Practice, 9 Melville Street, Ryde, the Yarbridge, 99 New Road, Brading, the Star Inn, High Street, Ryde, 68 High Street, Ryde, 8 John Street, Ryde. New scaffolding is due up at the Castle Lodge, Dover Road, St Helens, due up the 12th of January 2018. And we move over to this week's In Touch. Peter Wight and guests discuss the implications of the government's Green Paper on employment and disability and its news target of finding jobs for 1 million more disabled people in the next 10 years. Marv King, who recently featured in the BBC Two series Employable Me, talks about his experiences over 6 years of unemployment. Richard Kramer, Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the charity Sense, which provides support to people with complex communication needs, gives his response to the government's plans. Sam Latif, Director of Diversity for Procter & Gamble, puts the case for audio description to be included in TV adverts.
And now for the headlines. College in crisis. The school's future in the governor's hands. A statement said, "We have tried to work with Christ the King to help with the debt, but there remains no plan to deal with it. This cannot continue. We have been forced to advise the school we cannot allow it to plunge further into the red, and we will not extend further lending," he said. "We stand ready to help, but we will not condone this poor financial management, and we are not prepared to saddle this council and this island with debts of this level for years to come." But the college hit back, claiming lack of funding had disadvantaged the school and left it with no choice but to hire its own sixth form. The governing body said, "All our revenue funds are spent on our students and their education, and not, as the council wishes, on a building we believe should have been provided for our community." The £4 million sixth form centre was erected by Built Off-Site Limited, which leases it to the college at £650,000 a year, £10 million over the 15-year contract. When it expires, the school would have to pay a further sum, or Built Off-Site, which has transferred the liability to another company, School Facility Management Limited, could take the modular buildings away. When the county press revealed the college was £2 million in debt last year, Mrs. Goodhead said she absolutely expected to recoup the deficit in per-pupil funding as the sixth form grew. That has not happened, and it remains unclear how the college will pay the lease and continue to run the sixth form. Following a governor's meeting on Wednesday, Mrs. Goodhead said, "There are absolutely no plans to relinquish our thriving and successful sixth form. Our total commitment is to ensure this continues for current and future generations." Council Assistant Director for Children's Services, Felicity Rowe, said the school would find it difficult to pay its debt and lease costs from its £7.08 million annual budget. When the sixth form opened, it rapidly became apparent the college could not afford £650,000 a year, and the council provided that money so the school could continue to function. "I think most principals would consider it optimistic. Any school could afford that level of lease funding from the money received per pupil. Per-pupil funding is not intended to cover the cost of buying buildings," she said. The decisions around the future of the school are in the hands of the governors. If the sixth form closed, the school would still have the lease arrangement with Build Off-Site. She said college staff, students and parents were understandably worried. The council's decision to call in the debt sparked a very public spat between the school and the authority, played out on the county press website this week. The school claimed the lease agreement was approved by the council and produced a letter to that effect from former Chief Executive Steve Bynan, but the council denied endorsing the idea. It claimed the letter merely stated the school was free to enter into the agreement if it wished. The council claimed the move to establish an 11 to 18 school was driven by Christ the King, but the school said it was at the behest of the authority. The school denied claims of financial mismanagement as evidenced by PwC audits, but the council said a recent audit had criticised the lease agreement and the school had been issued with a notice of financial concern last May. Claims the school had refused to draw up a debt recovery plan were denied by the governing body, which said, "At no time has the college refused to work with the local authority, and it is committed to finding a solution to resolve this debt. However, the governing body remains adamant the responsibility to address the situation does not and should not remain solely with the college."
Floatie in trouble. The troubled floating bridge service linking Cowes and East Cowes was out of action again yesterday, that's Thursday. Isle of Wight Council Highways bosses suspended the service after a fault developed on one of the ramps, forcing them to reinstate a passenger launch linking the two towns across the River Medina. The bridge returned to service on Monday for a trial period to give the Isle of Wight Council a chance to see if problems which have plagued the vessel had been fixed. They included problems with the chains, groundings, noise and cars being damaged when they were driven on and off the bridge. The Isle of Wight Council apologised for the latest glitch in the service and was due to give residents an update later on Thursday. Meanwhile, campaigners claim the £3.2 million vessel is not fit for purpose and never will be. Campaign group Floatie stakeholders claim the bridge cannot be fixed and instead the council should commission a new vessel.
Planned operations to be cut back. The number of planned operations at St Mary's Hospital will be reduced to help staff cope with the winter demands. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust has revealed its winter plan, which sets out how it will manage the busy period. The number of planned operations carried out will be reduced to free up beds for medical patients, meaning staff can be redeployed in priority areas. The plan states people will not be treated in corridors and patients will not have to wait on a trolley for very long periods, as in some previous cases. Staff rotas will be reviewed and adapted. Bosses will have daily briefings with their teams and plans will be put in place to help deal with outbreaks of norovirus and flu. Also, patients who live alone will be given a snack pack containing a sandwich, fruit, crisps or cake and a drink. During the winter period, the Trust estimates it will give out snack packs to 64 discharged patients a week.
Ex-youth centre could house shelter. Homeless people's charity, the Bus Shelter, may be moving into permanent accommodation at the former Ryder Youth Centre. The bus shelter has been unable to open its converted bus so far this winter because the Isle of Wight Council has not found a place for the bus to park, so the charity is making plans for a fixed address. The charity has also been given a £5,000 grant by the Island Roads Foundation for a pilot project, working with the Isle of Wight College to provide courses to bus shelter users to help them get back into work and secure accommodation. If the bus shelter moves into the former Ryder Youth Centre, sited in the High Street, the charity plans to use the ground floor to house the shelter. Bus shelter trustees said in a statement, "We hope to develop accommodation upstairs where people ready to move on with their lives could acquire the skills they need to live in their own accommodation again. There would be space for counselling, training and befriending, as well as laundry facilities, showers, hot meals and warm beds. The bus itself would still be needed as a first point of need, and there is a space behind Ryder Youth Centre where it could be parked when not in use. In order to achieve this, we will need to fundraise, and if you feel you could continue to support this work, go to our website www.thebusshelterileofwight.co.uk or contact us on info@thebusshelterileofwight.co.uk. We can be proud of the fact this groundbreaking project was started here on our island and is now being copied by other groups and councils across the UK.
Chippie Has Christmas battered. Cow's Chip Shop Corrie's cabin has unveiled this year's battered Christmas treat. Following the success of festive foods from previous years, which have included battered sprouts, battered pigs in blankets and battered turkey and stuffing rolls, manager Daryl Mooney has spent the year thinking of another item to add to the festive fare. Daryl said, "Last year, the sprouts were so popular it almost caught us out. I've been trying all sorts of things for the last couple of months and in the end decided to get a little bit of help from Facebook. Thanks to Corrie's fan Amy Overton, we have settled on battered Herbie sausage meat stuffing balls. We're even adding a festive gravy to the menu for December."
Snack matter, no reflection of the island. You may think a few packets of crisps and some cakes is not exactly rolling out the red carpet for star performers, but that's exactly what they want. When Irish comedian Ed Byrne performed at Shanklin Theatre recently, he posted a picture of his backstage snack selection on Twitter, commenting, "Not too shabby, sweet and savoury on offer." But one theatre goer, who contacted the county press, thought it was unsavoury treatment. Caroline Johnson said, "You would think they could lay out more on hospitality than £6 worth of snacks and maybe showcase some of the island's fantastic produce." But Vic Farrow, the theatre booking manager, said, "It simply doesn't work like that. Ed asked for some snacks, and that's what he got. If he had wanted any more than that, we would gladly have got it for him."
Ryder upset over police response. An island rider has spoken of her disappointment after her horse was hit by a driver and no action was taken by police. Carol Lith from Monk's Lane Freshwater was riding Peanut along Granville Road, Totland, just after 3:30 p.m. on November the 10th with a friend. She claims an elderly man drove his car on the wrong side of the road, hitting her horse and pushing them onto the pavement. "Although I was shouting for him to stop and hitting the top of his car with my whip, it was as if this elderly man didn't see us at all," she said. Luckily, he was only going about 5 miles per hour, but Peanut was very shaken by the incident. Carol gave the driver's details to police, including a registration number, car make and colour. In a statement to the county press, police said, "On November the 10th, officers received a report of a car having collided with a horse which was being ridden on Granville Road. The car had hit the rear legs of the horse as it drove past. This incident was reviewed and no criminal offences were identified, therefore no further action was taken." Carol said she was disappointed at the decision to take no further action. She said, "It really puts me off riding my horse along the road. We were just trying to get to the bridle path, but we often get abuse from drivers saying we shouldn't be on the road. Would it have been better if the driver had killed us? Would they take action then?"
Road to nowhere injunction threat. Barrett Holmes could be slapped with an injunction, stopping it building more Pan Meadows homes until the main access road is completed. The developer should have completed Godric Road before starting the third building phase, but has failed to do so. leaving around 100 homes stuck at the end of the longest cul-de-sac on the island. Godric Road falls 400 metres short of linking to St George's Way, which means residents have to drive to the Staplers roundabout just to leave their homes. Dubbing it the Road to Nowhere, Ward Councillor Jeff Brodie accused Barrett of treating the Isle of Wight Council with contempt and treating residents shabbily because they lived in affordable homes. A Barrett spokesperson denied the allegations. The suggestion the work has been delayed because we value occupants of affordable homes less is saddening and completely untrue. We too would like to see Godric Road completed as soon as possible. Regrettably, work has been delayed for a number of reasons beyond our control, but we are working with the council to get it back on track. No formal stop notice has been served on our Phase 3 works. The council requested a cessation, which we did. Head of Planning Wendy Pereira said she would consider an injunction if the works resumed before the road was completed. Councillor Brodie said, "Barretts do what they like at Pan Meadows. Are we going to continue to allow them to push us around over our land and our planning approval? They have played the council. They are a major private company. They know what they're doing. I'd be laughing if I were a shareholder." The Pan Meadows project has been rated high risk by council auditors. Barrett is supposed to pay the council upon completion of each of the 3 phases. The amounts are commercially confidential, but has yet to pay anything other than an initial £1 million because none has been completed. There are no penalty clauses for non-delivery. Barrett said there has been no attempt to avoid paying the council.
Pair jailed after man was bottled. 2 men have been jailed for a total of nearly 19 years after a man was stabbed in the face with a bottle in Ryder, which left him with serious, life-changing injuries. Desmond Wiggins, 34, of George Street, Ryder, was jailed for a total of 12 years. Once released, he will be on licence for 5 years after he was judged to be dangerous at a sentencing hearing at Portsmouth Crown Court. His co-accused, Andrew Newton, 42, of Node Close, Ryder, was jailed for 6 years and 9 months for his part in the attack. Both men had been accused of wounding with intent and carrying an offensive weapon in a public place. The incident took place on Ryde Esplanade, outside the King Lud pub, on August the 6th this year. Newton admitted both charges, while Wiggins admitted carrying an offensive weapon, but was found guilty of the wounding charge following a trial.
Millions for disabled girl damaged at birth. A girl left significantly disabled after she was starved of oxygen at birth will receive a compensation package worth millions of pounds. She was awarded 60% of her claim, which Mr Justice Foskett admitted in the High Court on Monday was not enough. The child, who cannot be identified, suffered devastating brain damage when she was born at St Mary's Hospital and will require 24-hour care for the rest of her life. Her parents sued the Secretary of State for Health, and following Monday's hearing, she was awarded a £2.49 million lump sum plus annual payments to cover ongoing care costs. She will receive £62,000 and £12 a year until she is 11, rising to £90,000 a year to age 18, and thereafter £144,000 a year for the rest of her life. The Secretary of State did not admit liability for the girl's injuries, but agreed to settle to avoid a costly trial. Mr Justice Foskett said, "Inevitably, settlement for 60 50% of the full value will not go as far as meeting all her needs, but it will go a long way to making her life and those of all those nearest to her easier in ensuring she has appropriate care and supervision for the rest of her life. The settlement will enable additional care to be provided for her, though the family will undoubtedly continue to provide a great deal of that. I would like to express my admiration for all the work done by all of the family. NHS barrister James Watson said, "This is a case where the parents and wider family have put their interests absolutely first."
Serial burglar not jailed. A serial burglar took advantage of a church serving meals to the homeless by entering an adjoining art studio and stealing £4,000 worth of jewellery, an Island court was told. Graham Smith was spared immediate jail after he admitted the burglary at St Mary's Church, Ryde, on August the 20th. The 38-year-old of Belvedere Street, Ryde, entered the art studio after he'd enjoyed a free meal served by the church. Smith took a number of irreplaceable items which belonged to Jocelyn Galsworthy, including a rare brooch from Marylebone Cricket Club, the MCC, for her paintings of professional cricket matches played around the country, said Graham Gilbert, prosecuting at the IW Crown Court. The cash value of the stolen items was around £4,000. In her victim impact statement, Mrs. Goldsmith said she was very angry and disappointed the items would never be recovered. Mr. Gilbert said Smith had recently served 2 jail terms totalling 5.5 years. Smith's criminal record of 29 convictions for 64 offences, more than half of which include a number of burglaries and other offences of theft and dishonesty, was described by Judge Robert Hill as alarming. For Smith, Simon Foster said, "He went in, had a meal, with the possibility of trying to find a place to sleep, saw an opportunity and took it." Smith, who had already served 4 months on remand before the hearing, was sentenced to 6 months jail suspended for 2 years and was ordered to undertake a high-intensity drug rehabilitation.
Harbour plan approved. The owner of Bembridge Harbour has promised to start development there after finally being given the green light by the Isle of Wight Council. Malcolm Thorpe said, "Our plans have now been on hold for 2 additional years. It has proved difficult to keep and retain our business levels during that time, so we are not going to waste much time in bringing these plans forward." The Isle of Wight Council's 2015 approval was put under the spotlight after officers received detailed concerns from an objector about financial information relating to the companies that control the harbour. But Tuesday's planning committee meeting was told the barrister and district valuer both approve the figures of the enabling development. Bembridge Harbour Trust, which unsuccessfully tried to buy the harbour, called for a decision to be deferred, pointing to fundamental flaws in the financial case. Trust Chairman Jeremy Gully said analysis showed there were 5 more houses than needed, with profits going to a property company, not the harbour. Councillor Reg Barry said, "I don't understand that the 5 companies involved are all owned by the same people. Is it only me that can see there is something wrong here?" The application generated more than 500 letters, mostly objections. But Deputy Councillor Leader Councillor Stuart Hutchinson said there were sufficient safeguards for all profits to be invested in the harbour's facilities and its future. Mr. Thorpe said development was needed to make improvements to facilities.
Police seek driver over road rage. A 57-year-old man was taken to A&E with facial injuries after a row with another driver on Old Road, East Cowes, last Friday. Between 2:30 p.m. and 3 p.m, the male drivers of a grey Nissan X-Trail and a light green four-door BMW got out of their vehicles and were involved in an altercation, police said. The 57-year-old driver of the X-Trail was reported to have been assaulted by the BMW driver and was treated at the scene before being taken to hospital. A police spokesman said, "We would like to speak to the driver of the BMW in connection with this incident. He is described as mixed race, in his early 20s, 5'10" tall, of medium build, with closely shaved dark hair, stubble, and was wearing dark clothing."
Money should be spent on safe route. A Newport councillor has asked highways bosses to think again about creating a safer route for pedestrians who use Pan Lane to get to Asda before someone is injured or even killed. Councillor Jeff Brodie has persuaded the Isle of Wight Council to survey traffic speed along the road in the hope a case can be built for providing a well-lit pedestrian route. Pan Lane at this point is a narrow, hedge-lined and unlit country road without a pavement, which has a higher 30 mph speed limit than the rest of Pan, which is 20 mph. In 2014, Councillor Brodie asked planning officers to ensure a safe pedestrian route from Pan to the store, paid for by Asda. However, he was advised it was not necessary and could not be insisted upon under planning rules, something he disputed. The council also turned down his request for this section of Pan Lane to be 20 mph. Councillor Brodie said, "There is substantial money, £1.25 million, available from the Pan Meadows developers for highways works in Newport. I am suggesting some of this should be used to resolve this obvious problem. Planners argued residents should walk along St George's Way, about 4 times the distance along Pan Lane. I knew Pan Lane would become the preferred route."
New lineup for Eclectica Festival. Eclectica returns next year with the Fratellis, Scouting for Girls, the Hoosiers and Top Loader among early top announcements. The Boutique Music Festival at Robin Hill Country Park takes place on September the 7th to the 9th, with the announcement heralding a marked departure from the tribute acts of the inaugural event last year. Scouting for Girls will headline Saturday night, supported by the Hoosiers, and the Fratellis will headline Sunday, supported by Top Loader. Friday night's headliners are yet to be announced. Tickets went on sale yesterday. Robin Hill manager James Croft said, "We've taken on board feedback and we're going bigger with a 3-day weekend, camping on site, acclaimed talent, free kids tickets and great early bird offers."
Smash and grab, not what it seemed. A street fight is now thought to have been the cause of a broken cow's shop window, not a smash and grab raid. Blood left at the scene was analysed by police after it was initially believed display items had been stolen from the window of No. 1 Fragrance and Accessories in Birmingham Road between Wednesday night and Thursday morning last week. Owner Kay Reed said, "The first I knew the window had been smashed overnight was when a girl on her way to school very kindly phoned and told me. Glass went everywhere in the shop, but I cleared up and stayed open. I initially believed 5 pairs of size 5 funky wellies exclusive to my shop were taken together with the window display dummy boxes of perfume. I later discovered that a good Samaritan had seen the window had been broken and removed the items for safekeeping so they would not be stolen. I have also rewarded the schoolgirl for her kindness with a gift voucher."
Right royal tea for artistic youngster. A budding young artist will see his design featured on the Royal Hotel's Christmas card after winning a competition. Nettleston youngster Lucas Richards, 11, impressed the judges with his picture of the Ventnor Hotel at Christmas time. His prize included afternoon tea at the hotel last Saturday. The Christmas card competition was organised by the Isle of Wight Youth Trust and the hotel, a long-time supporter and sponsor of the charity. Trust Executive Director Merad Healy said, "We carry out the serious work of supporting our island's children and young people with professional counselling. This competition has been a chance for us to have a bit of fun with young islanders and get into the Christmas spirit." William Bailey, Managing Director of the Royal, said, "This project was designed to encourage children to get creative and have the opportunity for their creative flair to be recognised."
A disabled war hero was racially abused. A pensioner told a former British soldier left disabled by an explosion while serving in Afghanistan he was an IRA terrorist because of his Irish accent, an island court heard. Michael Kenneth Holmes, aged 67, was found guilty of a hate crime by island magistrates after a trial. The bench was told Holmes of St John's Hill, Ryde, had been abusive to his Belfast-born neighbour, Jefferson Floyd, on 2 occasions, one of them being racially motivated. As Mr Ford took his bins out on May the 24th, Holmes shouted, "I'm going to kill you, your missus and your dogs," from his nearby flat. Holmes also shouted, "The only army you ever served in was the IRA," as Mr Floyd returned from shopping on June the 12th. Holmes claimed he could not have shouted a racist remark at him, as he was on the phone to his partner, yet a phone statement proved he had spoken to her after the incident. He also tried to convince the court he did not recognise Mr Floyd's Irish accent. Presiding Magistrate Peter Redding said Holmes had not been a credible witness and was fined £300 with £130 costs. Mr Floyd, 48 years, seriously injured by an explosion while serving with the Royal Irish Regiment in 2003, said the assertion he was an IRA member had deeply upset him. Mr Floyd, who served in the army for 14 years, said his spine had been shattered by a bomb blast and that he had required major surgery to rebuild it. The police had taken Holmes's threats to kill so seriously they supplied Mr Floyd with a home security camera.
Fears over fire station. Fears have been raised firefighters could arrive too late to tackle emergencies in Yarmouth if the town loses its fire station. Yarmouth Town Councillors heard concerns freshwater fire station's crew would struggle to reach emergencies in time if the bridge over the River Yar was raised. The only other emergency crews would have to come from Newport. As reported last month, fire stations at Yarmouth and Bembridge could close and the number of firefighters be slashed by a third following a sweeping review of services. Isle of Wight Council Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Stuart Hutchinson, told town councillors the authority was having to find £7.5 million worth of savings. Although closure was not a budget proposal this year, the authority would probably be forced to do it next year due to further budget cutbacks. One of the things we are looking at is whether we can combine the police and fire service infrastructure, he added. We have a major review of fire services being looked at the moment that will result in substantial restructuring. Mayor of Yarmouth, Councillor Steve Cowley, said it was not possible for fire engines from Newport or Freshwater to meet response times for certain areas. Former firefighter Councillor Rodney Corbett claimed the fire service saw both Bembridge and Yarmouth fire stations as weak links in the chain, and they had stopped trying to recruit firefighters for Yarmouth. Isle of Wight Council buses have said the aim was to improve services rather than cut costs.
Publicity for plastic pollution at Compton. One of the island's best-loved beaches has been named and shamed as a plastic pollution black spot by a national newspaper. Piles of plastic at Compton Bay were pictured in the Daily Mail newspaper. Compton was listed among other pollution black spots in an article which highlighted the global problem of plastic pollution as 100 nations signed up to a UN pledge to fight the scourge. But picking out Compton was slammed as misleading by the head of the island's tourism organisation, who feared it would damage the island's reputation. Chief Executive David Thornton said, "The Isle of Wight is very well known for its lovely beaches, many of which have won awards. It is unfortunate we have been drawn into a global environment issue, which is deeply concerning for the whole planet, and I think highlight the island in this article is rather misleading." In the wake of the publicity, Blue Seas Protection, a Sandam-based organisation, highlighted its Operation Sea Sweep, a three-pronged approach to tackle the issue. It is organising beach sweeps to clear plastics and other pollutants to prevent them being washed back into the sea. Blue Seas Protection says it has developed a prototype device to sweep the top level of seawater where most of the plastic debris floats before it breaks down in sunlight into smaller pieces to be ingested by marine life and seabirds. Blue Seas' Gary Oates said the third prong was to sweep the seabed of so-called lost or abandoned ghost fishing nets. We have recently obtained a licence to recover these nets around the island and south coast in 2018 and will be looking to start operations early in the new year.
Rosalind braves shave for cancer research. A Newport woman decided to shave off her long hair to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support and to donate her hair for wig making. Rosalind McCourt, 27, had her hair shaved off at Ryde Methodist Church by hairdresser Debbie Hall. Rosalind said, "I saw a statistic that said that when men find out they have cancer, they ask how long they have. But when women hear, 70% first ask whether they will lose their hair." This stuck with me, so I decided to donate my hair to the Little Princess Trust to help make wigs for children with cancer. Everyone I know has had someone they know who has had cancer, and yet we still haven't found a cure. More money means more research and more chance of finding one. Thank you to anyone who supported me.
Advent calendars filled in reverse. The Advent period has now well and truly started, but it is not too late to join in with the Isle of Wight Food Bank's Christmas appeal. The food bank is piloting a reverse Advent calendar where people can donate an item a day during the Advent period. Individuals, families and organisations can create their own food bank box and fill it up in the run-up to Christmas. Staff at the County Press recently filled 3 reverse Advent calendar boxes with 42 kilograms of food and hope their donation will encourage other island firms to take part in the initiative. An Isle of Wight Food Bank spokesman said, "The idea is to not only raise food stocks, but to raise awareness regarding the reality of food poverty, particularly at this time of year. If you would like a calendar or food list or poster, contact us on 292040 or info@isleofwightfoodbank.org.uk. Anyone who would like to fill their boxes in advance and get them in before Christmas can drop them at the food bank on Love Lane, Cowes, up until 12:30 p.m. on December the 22nd. The food bank reopens after Christmas on January the 3rd, and reverse advent calendar boxes can also be dropped off then. The list of 24 items is coffee, tea, soup, tinned potatoes, tinned tomatoes, tinned vegetables, tinned fruit, tinned spaghetti, tinned fish, tinned meat, pasta sauce, sponge pudding, rice pudding, custard, baked beans, UHT milk. Vegetarian option is fruit juice, rice pasta, biscuits, cereal, loo roll, jam and fruit squash. And there we are. Our recording engineer has said it's time for us to say goodbye to you. So goodbye and a very Merry Christmas from me.
And a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from me.
Hello, it's Madeline and
Barry.
And we're reading the second part of the County Press today.
And the first letter we have is titled Best Value for Taxpayers from Richard Hards of Whippingham. At the Isle of Wight Council IWC Cabinet meeting on November the 9th, the Council decided to renew the arrangement with Hampshire County Council for it to manage our children's services once the compulsory arrangement ends next June. On the face of it, this seems to be a good idea. However, it would appear there is a massive sting in the tail for Isle of Wight Council taxpayers. On October the 16th, HCC considered a paper which contained some disturbing revelations about its own children's services department. The report showed HCC is very concerned Ofsted may well downgrade its children's services safeguarding arrangements when it is inspected next year. The report then highlighted the various actions proposed to mitigate this risk, giving one reason if they do not make rapid improvements they could well lose the income paid by the Isle of Wight Council. The actual terminology used was, quote, "As a good authority we are offered opportunities such as the Isle of Wight... which generates small but not inconsequential income for the Council." Now the report goes on to discuss proposals for budget savings next year, and without going into detail, HCC's children's services alone are expected to save upwards of £50 million, which, to put that in perspective, is about double what the whole Isle of Wight Council is working to save next year. So we can conclude the sum of money, which is small but not inconsequential, for HCC is actually very significant for our council. The Isle of Wight Council taxpayers need to be asking their councillors why we are subsidising the much wealthier HCC, especially when, by its own admission, it is at risk of being downgraded by Ofsted. Clearly, HCC's children's services are not as good at safeguarding children as their propaganda would have us believe.
And the next letter, Island Charity, and this is from Joe Dare, the CEO at Age UK in Newport. As the CEO of Age UK Isle of Wight, I was surprised to open the County Press on November the 17th to find an insert requesting donations to Age UK, the national charity. This may surprise you, but did you know Age UK Isle of Wight is a local charity, independent of Age UK, the national charity? We work solely for the benefit of our older residents. Each year we are receiving more than 50,000 calls and helping more than 11,000 local older islanders. We are so grateful to those who support our work by either volunteering or making a donation to enable much of our charitable work to continue. Some islanders will wish to donate to the national charity by responding to requests, such as the one placed in the county press, or by donating goods to the local Age UK shops. However, if you want to be sure your donations or legacy benefits older vulnerable islanders, such as those with dementia or those who will have no one at Christmas, please contact Age UK Isle of Wight directly in the following ways. Call Alicia Leachman on 01983 301 343 or email fundraising@ageukisleofwight.org.uk or visit the website www.ageukisleofwight.org.uk.
And now we have a letter from Sue Birch of Brading. Over the year I have visited St Mary's on numerous occasions and have been shocked at the state of the main entrance. It looks neglected and not especially clean. This is the hospital shop front. It should be pristine, clean and presentable. To see this neglect does not reassure us that all is well. We all know the hospital is in special measures, but does this mean cleaning has been cut to help balance the books? To see the filthy glass at the entrance, plus the dirty floors, and on occasions a dusty and dirty stairway, does not give assurance you are entering a clean and hygienic environment. No amount of hand gel facilities are going to combat the contamination trodden by foot and spread across this site. I used to admire the way this area was kept previously. The glass was always sparkling and the floors were clean. Not anymore.
And the next letter, Lou's debate, and this is from Mr. T. Fisher from Limerston. Spend a penny, chance would be a fine thing. They say they are going to renew the toilets at the top of the town. What about all the people near the bus station, especially elderly who can't get that far? The old block of toilets were great. Maybe they could do what Shanklin did, renovate and put 20p charge. At least we would have them. Surely all the people that use the bus station are entitled to it. Don't get caught short in Newport.
And Minstrel Quest from Donald Baker of Welton by Lincolnshire. I'm trying to piece together my great-great-uncle Donald Marshall's life on the Isle of Wight regarding his setting up and running of the Royal Osborne Minstrels from around 1879 to 1893. He is buried in Northwood Cemetery, and speaking to the friends of the cemetery, they have little knowledge of him. I appear to be the last surviving member of the Marshall family, through my grandmother, his niece, and am trying to glean as much about him so that he can be the proud bearer of a blue plaque in memory of his entertainment career in the island. He does appear to have employed a Joe Morley, who went on to become a famous banjo player and died in 1937. The royal part of their name may have been derived from the group playing for Queen Victoria.
No worries from Mr. T. Bodman, Shanklin. In reply to Glenn Copperney and his concerns in the county press on the 1st of December this year, he worries about the large number of people who are being ignored. Does he not accept democracy as the will of the majority? He has a worry regarding the future of farming. If he had read the report on the young farmers' Brexit debate, it states there is a great deal of talent wanting to enter the industry with some fresh ideas. The subsidies are not EU money. They are a recirculated part of our annual contribution. It is British money. His other concerns were housing and food prices. The housing crisis is a population crisis caused by immigration. As for food prices, we are still in the EU. Years ago, we were told the Common Agricultural Policy added £8 per week to the average family food bill. When we leave, prices will fall as we delete the tariffs imposed by the EU on imports from non-EU countries. My final point is Nick Belfitt should buy a dictionary. Nothing is a fact until it exists, has happened, or is proved to be true. Forecasts are predictions, estimates or calculations based on the assumptions of those making the forecasts. They cannot be facts and are frequently wildly inaccurate. Old Moore's Almanac might well be a better opinion.
And letter from Diana Conyers of Ryder. Do you need your winter fuel payment? If not, please donate it to the Footprint Trust. Many elderly people rely on this benefit to keep their homes warm during the winter months. However, winter fuel payments are not a means-tested benefit. All older people get them, irrespective of their income. Therefore, some of the island residents who receive these payments can afford to keep their homes warm without this extra support. If you would like to donate your payment to the Footprint Trust, you can do so online at www.footprinttrust.co.uk/donate, or you can send a cheque to the Footprint Trust Limited at the Riverside Centre, The Quay, Newport, Isle of Wight, PO 302QR. I have donated mine, so please join me in supporting this important local charity.
Bins problem from Bill Martin in Cowes. If the Isle of Wight Council is no longer to pay for lost bins, might it instruct the contractors to ensure the bins are left in a relatively secure position? For instance, when there is a gale blowing, not infrequent on the island, the bins could at least be laid flat within the curtilage so they don't simply blow away. As for the paper and card inserts, I'm on my third already, as the bin men don't often realise, their words, they are inserted in the bin and the lorry chews them up. It would be nice if the contractor paid for this collateral damage rather than the council taxpayers.
And calling shipmates from Mike Crow of Sandown. Many readers would have served in the Royal Navy, and having left, possibly quite some time back, are now missing the old camaraderie they had with their old shipmates. To relive that camaraderie and possibly meet up with their old shipmates, they should get the monthly mailing list of Royal Navy reunions, giving the dates, which HM Ships Association they belong to, where it is being held, and who to contact. Have a look at www.rnshipmates.co.uk and check the reunion section. There are currently well over 30. Reunions listings is available by emailing Royal Navy Reunion at gmail.com. See where the reunions are being held and then find out what is included, such as a visit somewhere, a gala dinner, the traditional tot of rum on most of them. Of course, the wives and partners are not forgotten. They meet up at the reunions and have a good time too.
And now some letters of the week. The first one, Power of the County Press, from David Holmes in Totland. Terrific news following your story about my mother, Hazel Wild. We wanted to let you know the power of the press seems to have worked. Last week, my mother was visited by a team of physios from St Mary's, who, noting her progress, set to work immediately. Not only did they give her some long overdue physio there and then, they have also given her hope, promising weekly sessions from now on. We cannot begin to tell you how much this means. Because of this intervention, Hazel may yet regain some independence. Wonderful news for her, the family, and in the long run, even the taxpayer. The county press does an excellent job holding those in authority to account when all else seems to have failed.
And rethink needed from Roy Richardson of Wootton. Here we go again. Fixed link or better transport. Our roads are in an awful state. So much for the PFI. We can't wait 20 years for them to be fixed. Time for a rethink. Beaching did the island no good service back in the heyday of rail, but to reintroduce it today will cost millions. Who pays? The major problem is the ferry companies overcharging. What the island needs is a new in-depth solution where everyone puts in their feedback and then for it to be costed.
Lovely trees from Sue and Terry Harlow of Ryder. On Sunday we went to see the Bryston Christmas Tree Festival. We wish to thank everyone who contributed such a lot of hard work into putting on this event. Every tree was individual and beautifully presented.
A letter from Phaedra Kelly of Ryder. No free speech. Is Rebecca Ronoconi on the same island? Does she not know nobody's allowed to see their opinion in letters column of their local paper if the subject happens to be pride or gay or anything related? Those brave enough to contribute a view under any name, let alone their own, are criminalised and demonised and should have been published at all by those they criticise. Come to the next issue. This we have all witnessed since the newly promoted editor slammed the lid tight shut on a mounting pressure cooker. No one who has been published ever even once strayed into being, quote, homophobic. Rather, all were careful not to do so. But the heterophobes constructed that accusation without ever once qualifying how or with what words the authors were guilty. A phobia, however, is a psychological fear, a well-established mental illness, so that heterophobes may exercise theirs, while discriminating against all they perceive of as phobic about them. This is far from any kind of true equality. Mr. Mime has a right, as a free-born Briton, to state his views on issues which have cause and effect on him and a greater majority of residents, as I do. And as a real gender transient, I demand the right to establish for a fact that none of the matters mentioned have anything at all to do with real transgender. We have not been consulted. Had we been, we would disagree with a lot of what is going on, and for very good reasons of our own. Our name is being used without our permission. If real TGs were so free and equal now, not only would we have a public voice in all media, the media would not dare to censor or prohibit that. So, case proven. It's not us. And now the rest of the public also knows how it feels not to have a right to a public voice, to be interpreted for, talked over and talked down to. Some might think I would be gleeful about that. I am not. Real TGs do not engage in the politics of revenge. And the editor has placed a footnote here. Phaedra knows I called a halt on the pride debate in the CP a few months ago, as it was simply going round in circles. You can have too much of a good thing.
Fixed link scheme, fine idea, from David Atkin, East Cowes. If, as Angela Hewitt says, I got my facts wrong regarding the bus laybys, then of course I apologise unreservedly on that account. My entire reason for writing was to counter a totally uncalled for, sarcastic letter about a very forward-thinking scheme, which would give both sides of the fixed link debate a compromise solution. This idea would give 24/7 access between the island and the mainland, free of weather constraints, and most importantly, without adding a single extra car onto our already overburdened roads. I think Cathy Folkes's idea of a fixed train link is a very imaginative and deserves more than a summary brush-off. I don't think her scheme will ever get off the ground because of the sheer expense involved. If her scheme is for passenger traffic only and does not address the important question of freight traffic, it will probably attract little or no investment, so we have no need to worry about our island status for many years to come. I am against a fixed link which would allow unrestricted road access to the island for the many and varied reasons already stated, but would probably favour a public transport link.
And then from J. Gibbons Ryde, that was a very peevish, not to say rancorous column from Ms. Rocoroni this week, was it not? My old grandma would have prescribed a dose of salts. Anyone who can't remember what it's all about can use the archive to look up Ms. Hofton's last article, and may wish to compare the tone of that with the recent article of Malcolm Mimes and the new one of Rebecca Rocoroni's, to see how they compare. Some show more tolerance and, since this is the season, goodwill to all than the others.
Democracy from Brian Greening, Newport. How appropriate that in the week the county press announces teaming up with the BBC to maintain coverage of democracy in action, the Deputy Chairman of the Council uses his power to approve an application for another supermarket for Newport. Not another bench in Lytton Park or additional Christmas lights in the town that one could understand him taking, but a major decision that affects many of the town's other businesses. The Tories complain when trade unions call strikes after only 25% of their membership vote for action and then ride roughshod over local public opinion. Raise a glass to true democracy in action. P.S. £350,000 for that site is equivalent to the cost of 2 building sites for 2 houses locally. We need an independent valuation, or was that the sum in the contract?
Now we have a letter from Bob Seeley, the MP, Chillington. I was concerned to hear of the Sandown student who said that I had not responded to a letter. I posted a letter to a student at the sixth form on December the 4th. I explained why I had persuaded the Secretary of State for Education to keep Sandown Secondary School open, and why I had also persuaded her to ensure the AET Academy left. I respect the students' fight to keep Sandown sixth form open, but I can't agree with it. I need to act in the best long-term interests of the island. We need to improve sixth form provision on the Isle of Wight. Keeping small sixth forms which cannot serve their students properly is not an option. We need fewer but better sixth forms, delivering the quality and breadth of education which equips more of our young people for university. More generally, my office receives more than 200 emails and letters a day, over 1,000 a week, and nearly 5,000 a month. Some of these can be answered quickly. Others require detailed investigation by myself or my staff. My team is excellent, and I am proud of them and their passion for the island, but we are still new. We are getting there. The Isle of Wight is the largest constituency in Britain. Despite the size of the island, we have no extra funding from government to have more staff. Therefore, I do not have the capacity to respond to comments on Facebook, Messenger or other social media. I try to be as accessible as I possibly can. I attend many events on the island and have met hundreds of people in the past few months. Anyone who contacts my office with a letter, Northwood House, Ward Avenue, Cowes, PO 318AZ, or email bob.seeleymp@Parliament UK, will receive a considered answer. Responses to generic campaign emails forwarded to me are posted on my website. I hold regular surgeries at different locations across the island and look forward to meeting many more islanders in the weeks and months to come.
It seems obvious from Alan Blackburn in Cowes. I'm just a simple soul, but we have a football club close to the town centre, So why build one 3 miles away so people will have to drive or catch a bus, as many could walk to the existing one? Why not have the retail shop out there? There is a shipyard already working very well, so why not just put a new hoist there? It would be a lot cheaper as well, without spoiling more of the Medina Valley. How much will taxpayers get from the sale of the land at East Cowes if the plans go ahead, as it was brought by a government department at the time SEEDA?
And from Brian Whitwood, Sandown, like many people, I am concerned about the Brexit divorce bill. When you leave a club, there is usually a price to pay. I would like to remind Europe it would not exist if the UK had not put itself in tremendous debt with the USA, with the Lend-Lease plan during the Second World War, which was paid back 1946-2006. This should be taken into consideration by the government during negotiations.
And now looking back 100 years, on December the 8th, 1917, an appeal was issued to the women of the island to help create a new ensign for the Royal Navy. One of the new ships was named Vectis, and Victoria Milford of East Cowes wrote it was a tradition for women to present the ship which bears the name of their home with a silk ensign to be flown when going into action. And non-registered horses risked getting islanders fined. Major C. Pelham emphasised all people who hunted with Isle of Wight hounds and horses were liable to be inspected by government officials. If upon inspection their horses were found to be eating oats and had not been registered, prosecutions would follow.
And 75 years ago, December the 18th, 1942, there was mixed news from sea in this week's war news. The Walters of Ventnor lost their eldest son, Wally, after his ship was torpedoed in October. He had been working as a wireless operator on a merchant vessel. However, news reached Mrs. Chambers, also of Ventnor. Their son had been found safely. Petty Officer Kenneth Jenkins had been serving in a ship lost in North Africa, but had arrived home safely. Vandals wrenched automatic locks from lavatories in Newport. The council referred the crime to the police and the issue was discussed. The locks had been particularly hard to come by, and Councillor Crossland said, "We would rather lose the money than the locks."
And 50 years ago, on December the 23rd, 1967, the previous week's snowstorm affected the Isle of Wight. People had been left without milk and bread, and children were stranded for several days. Efforts were discussed to reopen the railway between Shanklin and Ventnor. Ventnor Council began negotiations with the Minister of Health to acquire the former Royal National Hospital site, which lay to the south of Undercliff Road. Applications were made to the government for a grant of 75% towards the cost. The chairman of Ventnor Council proposed the matter be referred to the Finance Committee.
And 25 years ago, December the 18th, 1992, dinosaur bones were being dug up along the island coastline and sold for up to £100,000, Island MP Barry Field claimed. He wanted government legislation to stop pirates digging at valuable fossil sites and advocated a coastal protection zone. However, he was criticised for naming such a high price, with other MPs saying he risked new pirates flooding to the island in search of riches. The Siemens Plessy radar factory at Cowes was evacuated after 2 unexploded Second World War bombs were discovered by workmen digging a wall. Fire and ambulance crews stood by while a bomb disposal team was sent over from Portsmouth. A 100-yard exclusion zone was imposed and both bombs disposed of safely.
And 10 years ago, on December the 14th, 2007, there was a trail of devastation across the island as heavy storms lashed the island. A 30-foot tree crashed through a wall and across a road just before the morning rush, in the second storm to strike the island in a matter of days. The winds also caused a major electricity fault across the island.
Further Wight memories. Crowds watch that magnificent man in his flying machine. It is Saturday, July the 16th, 1910, and Robert Lorraine is flying a biplane over the Solent. The rain is belting down, it's blowing a gale, and he can't see where he's going. To make matters worse, he's lost, and his fuel is about to run out. And the day had started so well, ... Lorraine was a remarkable larger-than-life man. He was a talented actor, skilled aviator, noted theatrical manager and connoisseur of wine, women and song. To add to the potent cocktail, he was also handsome. Put Rick Mayall's Lord Flashheart in a white suit, and you're there. It was only 6 years before Lorraine's fateful experience that the Wright brothers had made the first manned flight in a heavier-than-air machine. Being one of those people who are good at everything, Lorraine eagerly took to flying, rapidly became an airman extraordinaire. That July afternoon he had taken off from the Bournemouth Air Show, simply intending to fly out over the sea in a circle before returning to land to rapturous applause. But a violent storm came in, and with zero visibility, it was only what he could see to guide him. Lorraine lost his way. To see an airplane in those days was a major event, so up on West High Down a group of people were braving the elements to get a look at this newfangled invention, including the man from the county press. Quote, "What was undoubtedly the most daring flight of the Bournemouth week took place on Saturday, when Robert Lorraine, the aviator, descended on the Needles golf links in his biplane. A few people had gathered on the Needles cliffs, and just before 4 o'clock a lady pointed out to sea and shouted the surprising message that a biplane was crossing the channel about a mile out. It was Lorraine, hopelessly lost. He had flown over the island without realising and was now heading out to sea. Miraculously, at the last moment, he caught a glimpse of the Downs. He quickly turned round and landed on the golf course, about 2 miles from the Coast Guard station. With a scoop in prospect, the intrepid county press newsman ran all the way and was one of the first to reach Lorraine. Soon a little band of people arrived, eager to greet Mr. Lorraine as the first pilot of a heavier-than-air machine to land on the Isle of Wight.
The brave aviator, though drenched to the skin and numbed with cold, calmly smoked a cigarette and told our representative that he had had a very rough time. When about 5 minutes out from Bournemouth, he ran into a terrific rainstorm which completely blotted out all signs of land. He groped his way along by pure guesswork, the rain half blinding him and making him very cold. For 3/4 of an hour he battled on, knowing his petrol was becoming exhausted. I was very thankful indeed to see these Downs and descended at once. "I don't know how much longer I should have been able to keep up," said Mr. Lorraine. On the following Tuesday afternoon, at just gone 6, nearly 2,000 people gathered round the edge of the chalk pit where the plane has spent the weekend to watch Lorraine take off for Bournemouth. When at 6:15 p.m. Mr. Lorraine was seen walking towards his machine, the crowd cheered lustily. For some minutes the aviator studied the sky, and after a long talk with his mechanic he suddenly threw off his coat and jacket, climbed to his seat, and his mechanic started the engine. After a run of about 100 yards, the biplane rose gracefully into the air, amidst the clicking of 100 cameras and the enthusiastic cheers of the crowd. Every eye watched him until he disappeared in the haze. There was no stopping Lorraine. 2 months later he made the first flight from England to Ireland, and a few weeks after that he sent the first radio signals ever from an aeroplane in Britain. He also found time to invent the word joystick. When war arrived 4 years later, Lorraine joined the Royal Flying Corps, where he set a string of records and gained a reputation as a daredevil flying ace. Along the way, he managed to crash 2 aircraft, naturally surviving unscathed. He faced a court-martial for drunkenness, a charge which was eventually dismissed, and was awarded an MC for conspicuous gallantry and skill, swiftly followed by the DSO. As to the ranks, he sailed through them all: Major, Captain, Wing Commander and Lieutenant Colonel. After the war, he returned to the stage as an actor-manager, enjoying great success. He went on to put on plays in the West End, starred in Broadway, and even appeared in several films. Well, he would, wouldn't he? Almost a year to the day after Lorraine's landing, and amidst great ballyhoo, a second pilot landed on the island at St. Lawrence. Behind the applause, everyone quietly knew that Lorraine had stolen his thunder. It was almost, but not quite, an historic moment. Treading carefully, the county press discreetly referred to it as the first intentional landing.
Now we have my view from Catherine James. Long live the Isle of Wight's High Street. This month's column comes to you from Oxford. As the Isle of Wight double knots its bonnet ribbon in preparation for gale force winds, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in the city of dreaming spires, writing on my smartphone, as the modern way is. As a trend-spotting food blogger for over a decade, I have watched the inexorable rise of the coffee shop. Surely Newport cannot take any more, the people cry. Well, with the arrival of the beautifully renovated Café Isola in Node Hill, it seems it can. We need to understand the high street is a shape shifter. Hands up who remember video rental parlours or record shops. Right, hands down, old gubbers at the back. I said hands down, Grandad. As people finally get their confidence to shop online without fear of having their money stolen by remotely located fraudsters, some old retail models have disappeared. I, for example, bought these fantastic flaming beetle crushers from China via eBay. Others will book holidays or purchase performance-enhancing pills, flicking through virtual shops while on the lavatory or in their pants, or maybe both. A look wholly unacceptable in real life emporia, except maybe in Wroxall. Of course, there may have been casualties, many of them. One national sporting goods supplier crushed its Isle of Wight competitors by underpaying its employees, potentially giving it a commercial advantage. But we can fight back. What can't you buy in cyberspace? Yes, that's right, a haircut, a manicure, a decent Americano, supped with a pail as you discuss your indifference to the Isle of Wight festival lineup, a meal out, or advice on whether you need a Whitworth or Imperial thread on that replacement nut. Hello, Hurst. Or, as the recent Christmas market in St Thomas's Square demonstrated, the internet can't give you a place to eat, street food, play in foam snow and have unscheduled gossipy encounters with your mates. Instead of generating new stuff away from our town centres, let's actually regenerate existing well-loved public spaces. The fortunes of our island's high streets ebb and flow. If we accept that some retail will be lost to the all-pervasive web, let's fill our streets with cafes, florists, restaurants, barbers and independents who aren't subject to the vagaries of the mainland market. Let's pepper the streets with services too. A design agency, a biltong factory, town council offices, a print shop. Visitors come here because it's different from their home. Let's not give them clone towns. Let's create a new model, and while we're at it, say no to out-of-town retail behemoths selling us junk we don't need. If we want that stuff, we'll get it online. The high street is dead. Long live the high street.
And from Jim Gibbons, Old Style Booting Up and Logging On. The first digital computers were huge, vastly expensive and unreliable, since they used thousands of valves with a very limited lifespan. The head of IBM is quoted as saying there might be a market worldwide for perhaps a dozen. With the development of transistors and printed circuit boards, they became smaller, more reliable and cheaper. In about 1975, the first personal computers made an appearance, and in 1977 the Commodore PET went into production. To a nerd like myself, reading about the Commodore PET was practically pornography. The cost of those things, compared to my salary, meant it was all just a dream to me. In 1979, a British company put on the market the Acorn System 1. Reader, I'd bought one. It cost me something like £100, which I could ill afford, but I could see the way the wind was blowing, and I thought it might be a good investment, just to get to grips with the technology. It was a very odd-looking beast, and consisted of 2 printed circuit boards with chips soldered on, joined by a ribbon connector. There was no case of any sort. It was open to the elements, or spilt coffee. One board could be folded above the other and secured to it by spacers to hold it about an inch above. The upper board had a keyboard of about 16 keys for inputting data, and an unbelievably small display. The display was the oddest thing. 8 tiny 7-segment displays, each with a mini lens to magnify it. By lighting up the combinations of these bars, you can represent digits fairly well, or letters fairly badly. An A was represented by all the bars except the bottom one. For a W, the best they had to offer was all the bars lit up except the top one. Memory at that time was like gold dust. The Acorn had 1K 1024 in bracket cells of changeable memory, and any program you wrote and the data it needed had to fit into that space and have a K of read-only memory, which contained all the routines needed to run the keyboard, the display and the cassette interface. Because of the limited display and memory, the programs you could write were very limited, though one ingenious soul managed to shoehorn in a simplified form of chess. I wrote a program called Albert, a learning by experience rudimentary thinker, modelling an animal foraging for food in different sites, and another to scroll messages such as "Hello World" or "Happy Birthday." By and large, people wrote games like NIM.
Soon other models appeared, bigger and better, with TV-like screens or using TVs as screens. The Sinclair ZX Spectrum, the IBM personal computer, the Amstrad personal computer, which through Alan Sugar's decision to market it as a word processor, opened up a whole new market of retired vicars and the like, who decided that this was the time to write that book. And finally the BBC, whose computers secured the school's market and introduced thousands to their version of BASIC because these newer models had sufficient memory. Other languages developed for these computers' big brothers became available. Algol, COBOL, Forth, Logo. As time went by, magazines appeared. Personal Computer World, Practical Computing, half advertising, half information, including other people's programs, which you could enter on your machine and hope to run usually failing because misprints were common, and the writer's machine and his dialect of a language was probably different from yours. That was half the fun. When Windows came in, the languages were upgraded to use the GUIS, Graphical User Interfaces. There are now more languages than you can shake a stick at. But BBC Basic for Windows is still going strong, and my electronic version of the Walk the Wight game was written in that. Languages and help in writing programs can now be downloaded from the web, some free of charge.
So what's on this week? So the Society Short Story Writing Competition, Spirit of Christmas award ceremony will take place at Newport Minster in St Thomas's Square, Newport, on Monday the 18th of December at 7 o'clock, and the doors open at 5:30. There'll be refreshments, stalls, raffle, and musical entertainment from Ricky J, Emily Scotcher, and with special guest Indana Minghella. And that's all we have time for today, so it's goodbye from Madeline.
It's goodbye from Barry, and the sun has come out. It's looking a promising day, and we both hope that you have a very nice weekend.
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind is again hosting the Short Story Writing Competition Awards Ceremony at Newport Minster on Monday the 18th of December. Doors open at 5:30 p.m, with the ceremony starting at 7 p.m. Back to record the winning stories for a second year are Katie Manning, best known as Jo Grant from Doctor Who and the Sarah Jane Adventures. Indana Minghella, accomplished jazz singer and island favourite. Recording for the first time this year is Melvin Hayes, best known from the TV comedy It Ain't Half Hot Mum. Musical entertainment is provided by Ricky J and Emily Scotcher, with special guest Indana Minghella. Come along for some festive fun and support Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, a local charity established in 1895. For more information, visit our website iwsb.org.uk. We look forward to seeing you.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Tonight, the government says it wants to get 1 million more disabled people into work over the next 10 years. But when it comes to visually impaired job seekers, can its performance match its ambition? And are we missing out on the joy of TV adverts?
Where the hell has all the mud gone? I'm sure there was lots of mud.
Well, that was an ad. Did you have the faintest idea what was going on there? Well, stay with us and you will. And the studio guest who can link these two together is Sam Latif. Now, Sam, you're working now on making ads more accessible. We will come to that, I promise you. But what's been your own experience as far as getting into work is concerned?
I've been very lucky. I've had very good experience, and partly it's because I've stuck with the same company for the last 17 years. So
that's quite interesting in a way, because some people say there is a fear that for a visually impaired person that you will actually stay where you are just because you're safe there and you don't have to start all over again.
Actually, I've had several jobs, Peter. So when I was at university, I was doing telesales in the old days, where I paid someone to record telephone numbers so I could dial those numbers and try and sell windows and doors, double glazing. But then when I graduated, I worked for Arnold Clark. It's Scotland's largest car retailer for a year and a half before I joined Procter & Gamble.
Which does suggest that you've actually been quite proactive, really, in fighting your own corner.
I think it's a case of being very proactive, luck, and really being able to educate people along the way that it's not as impossible as they might think.
But as you suggest, it's not the same for everyone. jobs may come and go, but the unemployment figure amongst blind and partially sighted people of working age stays stubbornly the same. It's reported only 1 in 4 people are in work. There's no reason to doubt the government's intention to improve this figure. Why wouldn't they, given the desire of the last 3 governments to get the benefits bill down? And they acknowledge there is a real problem. Their own figure in their Green Paper on Employment and Disability, released last week, is only 48% of disabled people as a whole in work. So what are their plans for visually impaired people? And what are the particular barriers that we face which might help explain our poor employment record? Well, disability and employment is currently being explored by a TV series on BBC Two, Employable Me, in which disabled people seeking work are helped to improve the way they present themselves for jobs and how they feel about their own abilities. One of those who's on the second programme was Marv King. He was made redundant from his job as a support worker 6 years ago and hasn't really worked since. Here he is on the programme with his advisor.
How many jobs have you kind of sourced and applied for in the last sort of period?
Probably only about 1 or 2.
Maybe it's time to sort of up the ante a little bit in terms of the volume.
Yeah, I think so.
But what I'm wondering is why you're not doing that already. I just think if you put this off, I worry that it will never happen. And I'm concerned that you're putting this off, if I'm honest, Marv. I'm actually a bit concerned.
Well, that's Marv talking to psychologist Nancy Doyle, and Marv is on the line now. Give me a bit more of an idea of how many jobs you applied to before that programme, since you actually lost your original job.
I've applied for, before actually applying to go on Employable Me, at least 50 in the probably 6-7 years that I've been out of employment. And unfortunately, some of them were considered, some I weren't successful for.
So, how many led anywhere?
In fairness, not many. Probably as many as I could count on one hand. And most of those were volunteer-based.
Right.
When things were becoming really difficult, the job advisors I had helping me with specialised organisations said, well, if you can't get paid work, then how about going down the volunteer route, which was a fair point. They can lead into paid work. But when you're looking to try and support yourself and make a contribution, it's difficult.
And with the jobs that didn't go anywhere, what kind of reasons were you given for being rejected or ignored?
Sheer number of applicants. Unfortunately, I was quite low down on the pile. And the fact that they felt, due to information given on the application forms, they're quite difficult to fill out sometimes when they ask certain questions. So they said that due to information given, I wasn't also shortlisted.
So is it fair to say, as Nancy was suggesting, that maybe, not really surprisingly, you'd rather lost heart?
Yeah, I did, because so many knockbacks had just made me feel like I weren't going anywhere. And employers had already got this mindset that they'd rather have employed a fully able body that they didn't have to make extra effort and adaptations for than someone like myself.
Well, just stay there, Marv. Thank you very much for that. Also with me is Richard Kramer, who's Deputy CEO of Sense. Now, that's a charity which represents people with complex communication needs, for example, people who are both deaf and blind. What's your reaction to the government's Green Paper? Because that 1 million figure in 10 years, on the face of it, that's a pretty ambitious aim.
Well, on the one hand, it appears to be ambitious, but we've also been here before, so I think it's fair to say that government has scaled down its ambition. The coalition government pledged to halve the disability employment gap by 2020 and get another 1.5 million people into work. They're now talking about getting 1 million people into work in the next decade. And what we've seen over the last 10 years, yes, more people are going into work, but the disability employment gap has remained static. There's still a 30% gap between the employment rate of disabled and non-disabled people.
So if the Minister, Sarah Newton, were here, what are the questions you'd be putting to her?
First of all, we're only going to make real progress if we support those who face the most barriers to work in addition to those who are closest to the labour market. So the question would be, what support are you going to provide for those with complex disabilities? And will you recognise as a positive outcome support around volunteering, training and work placements in addition to getting a job?
So substantively, you want volunteering almost to be included as work, do you? It's a question of people being active in the community.
I think there's a big thing about active citizenship and being part of the community. And actually government programmes don't contribute to the cost of support for volunteering. I think the wider issue is around social isolation. And I think that social isolation can have such a profound impact on confidence and resilience. If you've got less support networks around you, you've got less support there to help you fill in an application form that we heard earlier. And actually that lack of support means you're less likely to hear about new job opportunities.
It's sometimes suggested, indeed it was suggested on this programme last week, that voluntary organisations themselves and charities used to do more, used to have more advisors. It used to be doing the kind of thing that you're asking the government to do. Could that be laid at your door?
Well, Sense as an organisation chose not to take part in the work programme because the work programme poorly met the needs of disabled people. The contractors had very top-down targets, so we're really only trying to get those nearest into the labour market into work, and there were very few referrals to specialist organisations. So we've done our own thing.
So what is your own thing?
Employing disabled people across Sense. So one example is our support for Susan, who wanted to work in our cafe in Birmingham, and we're fortunate enough to have an adapted kitchen, so we provide some support and training there before she worked in the main kitchen. But actually Susan wanted to work more front of house. She wanted to interact with customers and serve people and clean tables. So we provided with her support to do so, including 2 cafe members and a support worker. And as Susan grew her independence, the support worker could withdraw. And that was a very good thing for Susan, because at one point she was surrounded by 3 people. And now it's gone to such an extent where not only is she serving customers and cleaning tables, but she's also teaching people British Sign Language. And that really is an example of active citizenship.
So this is a cafe which is essentially run by your clients, your members?
Yes, we're setting that cafe up as a social enterprise, but it's part of Touchbase, which is a community centre in Birmingham that offers health and social care services, but we have a large arts and performance space, office facilities and children's services, and it's in the heart of the community for the community in Birmingham. And
so effectively you are employing them?
Yes, we are employing them.
Yeah.
And back to active citizenship.
Which you couldn't expect the government to do directly, could you?
Well, what we would want the government to do is to support schemes like ours, where job coaches are provided to provide support in the workplace, to help them learn new skills and then to gradually withdraw.
Richard Kramer, thank you very much indeed. I want to go quickly back to Marv King. What has happened to you since being on the programme Employable Me, Marv?
At the end of the show, me and my partner had our son. I carried on looking for work. I guess knowing that my lifestyle was about to change drastically really kind of gave me a boot up the rear end, so to speak. And I feel like it really galvanised the drive and helped me to look for work more objectively.
Marv King, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, we did invite a minister on to the programme, but we were told that no one was available at the moment. But in a statement, a government spokesperson told us we've already increased the number of disability employment advisors in job centres, and we've recruited community partners with specialist knowledge of different impairments to improve knowledge and understanding of our work coaches. But we want to go even further, and our ambitious 10-year strategy sets out how the government will work with employers, charities, healthcare providers and local authorities to break down employment barriers for disabled people, including those with sensory impairments, over the next 10 years. And I should add that we are optimistic that we will have a minister on the programme, hopefully Sarah Newton, after Christmas. Now, Sam Latif, we haven't forgotten you. Do you have a view? I just wondered, because you've been around a little while and you know other visually impaired people. Why do you think those figures have stayed so stubbornly the same over the last, 30, 40 years?
Peter, I think it is actually very, very difficult to first of all look for a job. When you find a job, then to apply for the job. And then when you get accepted and successful in the company, it takes you a while to perform well. Like the story, I could really relate to the story that Richard said about Susan. When I heard about applying to Procter & Gamble, I needed help to fill out the application form, the online application form. I needed help at the...
Have you made them make their forms more comprehensible?
Absolutely, yes.
You have, good.
Yeah. And that's something that you can give back once you've been in the company. I needed help to fill out our psychometric test. I couldn't do it independently. And the people that gave me that help were an organisation like Sense. It was called Blind in Business. And I'm very, very grateful for them. And they did it without charging me. They did it, and they did a great job. And even when I was inside, when I started at Procter & Gamble, I expected to plug and play my assistive technology and it to work from day one. But that didn't work. That took a year of perseverance. I was so close to leaving, but a senior person in the company asked me, what can we do to help you? Because they wanted me to stay and do well, but we had technical challenges. So they actually employed an IT specialist to just work for me 100%.
And I guess what all this shows is a lot has to go right if it's going to come off for you as a visually impaired person, doesn't it?
And that's why I talk about luck, but also I think that employers need to take a risk. It's not that big a deal if you take on a person who's blind, even if it doesn't work out, but most of the time it will work out.
Let's bring you to the main purpose that you're here, and that is that ad we heard at the start of the programme. Let's have a quick reminder.
Where the hell has all the mud gone?
Right, now, as I said, it's not easy to know what's happening in that. Just explain the significance of that advert and what it all led to.
So the first time I watched that ad, I was in a room full of marketing people and not knowing why people were laughing in the room. I felt very excluded, not knowing what was going on, until someone sitting next to me described to me the scene, which was actually quite funny, and that then sparked interest in me to making P&G's ads audio described.
Right. Now, there is now an audio described version of the ad as the result of your efforts. Let's just hear it.
A white dog sings in a spotless kitchen. The dog leans on a clean white bath.
I'm sure there was lots of mud. I shook off so much mud.
A flashback to the dog shaking off mud and water. Earlier, a woman pours Flash into a bucket, then cleans the muddy kitchen floor, bath and countertops. She admires the clean home.
Now, what strikes me about that is we now know what's going on, but it's taken a bit of the fun out of the if you hear a rather sort of flat audio description of it, doesn't it?
It helps to paint the picture.
Yeah.
And we have to be very choiceful of how much dialogue to put in the 30 seconds. It's quite a challenge.
We wondered, I must say, how other blind people actually felt about this. And so we recorded a few views of what people thought about the idea of audio describing ads.
I think it would be brilliant if audio description was included on adverts, because then blind people would know what people were talking about when the conversation was about recent adverts, especially the Christmas ones.
If there has to be a priority, then I would like to see the programmes that I'm watching with proper audio description. I would hate to see adverts audio described while the actual telly I was watching in the first place wasn't audio described. That, I think, would be quite annoying.
Yes, I think there should be audio description in Christmas adverts because some of them are very, very visual. For example, the John Lewis one, my mum had to describe to me what was going on because there was just music and absolutely no audio commentary, so I had no idea what was even in the advert. So I think it's very important that these get described.
That was Fiona, Graham and Kay you heard there. So does that encourage you? I mean, there are clearly some people care about it. I bet there are quite a lot of people who don't. They might think there are other priorities in the world.
People are telling us again and again that they love audio description. Audio description has been life-changing, and now they think it's absolutely great that it's come to advertising because it makes them feel valued and included as consumers.
So, Sam, you've kind of campaigned for this idea in your company, but with other companies, how do you see this working? Should the agencies be saying this is something that we want included in our ads, or should the commercial companies be saying this is how we want to sell ourselves?
I think ultimately everybody has a part to play. I would definitely say that accountability and responsibility should be with the advertiser, but the agencies that bring the ad to life need to have the experience and the capability to making that ad inclusive through audio description, and it needs to be baked in to the ad creation process from the beginning instead of going back and bolting it on at the end.
How hard do you think it's going to be to persuade cash-conscious companies to spend the extra money to make their ads accessible?
The cost is very insignificant, Peter. It's not a challenge of cost. The challenge is lack of awareness with advertising companies and the technical capability with broadcasters at the moment. But we're working with the whole industry. We've worked with 26 different partners that are involved in making advertising inclusive. And we know we're going to get there, and cost is definitely not going to be a barrier.
Sam Latif, thank you very much indeed for coming on to the programme. And that's it for today. You can call our action line with your views and reactions on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk, or you can go to the website to download this week's and future editions of the programme. We'd also like your questions for the new Chief Executive of Guide Dogs for the Blind Association, Tom Wright. He's going to be our guest next week. From me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye.